first clap of those cheeks.
Mm-hmm. Clap dim cheeks, baby. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Anime Club After Dark, the podcast that delves into all things anime, manga, and otaku culture related. I'm your host, Alex, but you can call me Senpai, and joining me tonight, I have our poser extraordinaire, Natai.
Damn, it's been a while.
It certainly feels like it. So I know this won't be the very first episode that goes out of our podcast in 2022. However, it is the very first one we are recording in 2022. Because we're recording this on New Year's Day, Natai.
Yeah. Happy New Year, by the way.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. I don't exactly know what the first episode of 2022 is going to be. It's not going to be this.
No, not even
have
close.
some other stuff scheduled before this. But yeah, we're in 2022, and we're going to be talking about tonight. We're doing a spoiler cast for a show that came out near the end of 2021.
And quickly became one of the biggest shows of 2021.
Yes, and very quickly became something that a lot of people were talking about in 2021. That, of course, is Arcane. We'll get into that, but an animated series based on the quite popular video game League of Legends.
Just a small indie game you might have heard of called League of Legends.
Small indie game that a few people may have heard of. I do want to. So we'll get into the technical info here in just a bit about Arcane. I do want to ask you, though, just your opinion, Natai. Is Arcane an anime?
And that's the $1,000,000 question, right? I don't have a good yes or no answer. This isn't made in Japan, obviously, but as we all know,
it's
Avatar
made in France.
Yeah, but as we all know, Avatar: The Last Airbender is an anime, and it's not made in Japan. But Arcane has some anime qualities, sort of, in its storytelling. So, it's kind of I don't know. It feels anime from time to time, right? It has that anime feel.
It's certainly sometimes. A lot like you mentioned with Avatar. It's certainly anime inspired if it's not an actual anime. I mean, in the same way that something we talked about a lot last year, Castlevania is, while it may not be an anime in the strictest sense, it certainly is anime inspired, and it's why I think both Arcane and Castlevania are series that we have included in our end of the year awards that we're going to be doing in February. So
either way, it is an animated series, and it's I'm kind of jumping ahead, but it is a quite fantastic animated series.
Yes. So before we actually get into the meat and potatoes of what this is, let's kind of go down some of the technical info about Arcane. So this was, first and foremost, a co-production between Riot Games, the studio that makes League of Legends, upon which the story is based around, and a French animation studio named Fortiche. I assume I'm pronouncing that correctly. There's going to be some French names and stuff we talk about here in this technical section that I am sorry if I completely butcher. French is not my forte.
At least you try.
At least I am trying. It was directed by Pascal Charroux.
Okay, go on.
And Arnaud Delorde. I really hope I'm pronouncing that right. From what I've been able to tell, both of these people have not worked on a significant amount before this. So this is essentially I won't say that they're brand new to the idea of directing, but from at least what I've been able to find, they haven't.
This is their biggest project yet, for sure.
Yeah, this is by far the biggest and certainly most visible project that they have worked on thus far.
Something to note, though, that the studio worked on the show also created some of the music videos that League of Legends released over the years, which when you noted that made a lot of sense, because there's a lot of sequences in this show which are very music video-like, which is pretty cool.
Very, very much so, which we will certainly get to. You can certainly tell, though, that the music plays a big part in how certain sequences are animated, and I think it definitely shows that the studio that works on this loves the idea of making music videos.
Yep.
So the actual writing of the story was done by Christian Link, who is the creative director for Riot Games, and Alex Yee, who hasn't apparently done a whole lot aside from Arcane. Yeah. Also, I guess worth pointing out that Christian Link is also a music composer, so this guy has his hands in a lot.
Apparently.
The actual composers for Arcane were Alexander Temple and Alex Sever. I don't know exactly how you're supposed to say that. And the OST as a whole features an array of multiple artists.
Sting included.
Yes. Just amazing, like, ensemble of musicians and composers that were brought in to work on the music for this series.
Different genres, amazing. As well. Like, the soundtrack is so varied. Genres. Yeah, the soundtrack is very varied in like terms of genres. It just sounds they're going for. It's really, really cool.
Amazing when you think about how actually, in terms of episode count, short the anime the animated series, is.
People are gonna love that.
You know what? Fuck it. From now on, like, I'm gonna say anime instead of animated series, just because fuck you. I think it's an anime. And the opening theme is Enemy by Imagine Dragons and JID.
It's pretty good. I love the sculptures. The sort of the sculptures for the OP. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I think it was really, really well done, and I mean, it's Imagine Dragons. They're like becoming the. There's a phrase that someone used once for Imagine Dragons, and I really wish I could think of it off the top of my head now.
The Nickelback of the 2010s.
No, it's very apt. It's very apt for the kind of music they've been doing recently, and I forget what that word. It's something like drama core or something like that, where like they actually make music that should be like in very dramatic movies or TV shows.
Okay.
But anyway, it's great. The opening theme is really, really good.
Yeah, it's good.
And a question I want to ask before you and I go any further into this. Obviously, as I've mentioned, Arcane is based on League of Legends, a relatively popular game out there. Did you personally have any connection with League of Legends, playing it or having any other like esoteric knowledge about it before you went into Arcane?
So I've never played League. I never had any interest in it. I'm not a big MOBA dude. Don't really enjoy them. But over the years, like every now and then, they would release a music video of sorts that would just like storm through the internet. Like you couldn't miss it. You couldn't miss it. Everyone would be talking about him. Whether it be like the Jinx reveal trailer that they did ages ago with the music clip, which it's great, or the KDA songs they produced over the past 2 years or so, which also like incredible music videos. And that's the most connection I've ever had to League. Just every now and then I'll be like, oh, there's a new music video, and I'll watch it. I'm like, that's pretty good. Not gonna play this game, but it always seemed really cool. Like all these different characters. I'm not gonna play
this game. Nice try, but I'm not gonna play this game.
Pretty much, yeah. It's like, oh, these characters look incredible. They're really cool. Oh, this music is dope as fuck. I love it, but I'm not gonna play this game. That's the most connection I ever had to it. So I knew some characters, like Jinx, for example, how they look, but in a very basic level.
Yeah, and I have to say, going into this, I probably knew even less than you. Like, I knew 3 things pretty much about League of Legends prior to going into this. 1, it was a video game. 2, it's a game that people do play competitively, and some people have made pretty good money playing it professionally. And 3, that it has a reputation online. Whether it is deserved or not, that is not up for me to decide. But it has this reputation online of having a somewhat toxic player base.
You're correct. As someone who one of my friends plays League, and every now and then he'll show me clips of him playing with other people. Man, it's rough, dude. It's not great.
Yeah.
Just to throw in a quick question, did you have any because I sort of felt I knew what I was getting into. after all the buzz I heard from the show. But what kind of expectation did you have before you started watching, because you knew nothing about League?
I'll be honest with you. I kind of went in with very little expectations at all. I do know that there were a lot of people, like not just you and John, but there were multiple people on our Discord server that were constantly saying over the last like month or so, like, God, Arcane is great. Everyone should watch it. Everyone, like, even if you're not a fan of the game, if you know nothing about League, go watch it. Go watch it. Go watch it.
Yep, same.
So I mean, obviously, and people were talking about it, so I knew that it was at least on everyone's minds, but I didn't go in with like high expectations or anything, if that's what you're really asking.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of went in just expecting, like, I honestly did not think that what people were saying about if you know nothing about League, you'll still love it. I doubted that a little bit, because I feel like it's obviously based on the game, and I went in knowing or thinking that, you got to know something about the game to get the most out of this, right? And then, like, I'm very pleasantly surprised by the fact that no, you really don't.
Yeah, that's one of the main like points for the show. You actually don't need to know anything about League, because I also, in terms of lore and characters, I knew very little, and it really surprised me.
I would say if there was one other thing I did know about League of Legends prior to going into this, it was that I have heard from people who have played it that, yeah, there is actual lore to the game, or at least the game world, but you don't get a whole lot of that from playing the actual game. You get a lot of it from like other sources, like, books or the music videos or what have you. That's pretty much the only things I knew about going in. So maybe that's why I had I didn't really, I won't say I had low expectations, but I had very few expectations.
Yeah, that's fair. Was very curious to know.
Let's get into this. So the story of Arcane takes place over 9 episodes. Each one is roughly 40 minutes in length. It kind of varies between, like 40, 41, 42.
Very chunky episodes, yeah.
Around that 40-minute mark, which is essentially 2 anime episodes per episode, because most anime episodes vary between like 21 to 23 and a half minutes. So
I was very surprised by that length when I first started watching the episode, but it's kind of incredible how the pacing is just so right and so tight that it doesn't feel like it drags for a second of it. It's kind of incredible.
Yeah. And as we get into this, we'll explain it, but I don't know how you felt about it, but in 9 episodes, I feel like I had like 35 to 40 episodes worth of like story content, like you would with a normal anime.
Each episode is so dense. It's kind of amazing.
It is, but it's not too dense. Like it feels like really well paced, like you said.
Yeah,
it's not like overkill. But at the end of it, you feel like you've seen way more than 9 episodes worth of content.
It leaves so much, like, we'll get to the ending, but yeah, it's incredible how much they do in 9 episodes. And it's amazing how much you still want to see after only 9 episodes, right? There's just so much more that could be done in this setting with these characters, and they already accomplished so much with them. It's very exciting to think about it.
It is. And the story itself takes place over a very classic 3-act structure. So each act encompasses 3 episodes. So Act 1 is episodes 1 through 3. So let's get into that right now. I think one of the things that struck me, especially in the very first episode, was just how well the setting, the world that the story takes place in, is portrayed. We're dumped into a setting that it seems very, very alive. It's essentially a tale of 2 cities, even though it's actually technically 1 city. You have like the upper city of Piltover, which is this like gleaming metropolis that seems like, almost like a utopia, right?
Yeah, this very sort of quote-unquote progressive, science-focused city that's all about making progress and inventions.
Yeah, and then you have this undercity, which is it's not officially called Zaun. It's actually still part of Piltover, but a lot of the people that live there feel so separate from the actual upper city of Piltover that they may as well be a separate city.
Now, we need to get this out of the way, but the design of both cities, and in general, the background art for all locations in this show, incredible. Absolutely incredible. Like, it needs to be said. these places look lived in.
Yes, it looks lived in. It looks well thought out, the way that things are designed, and especially like the buildings. Like they look stylistic, but they also look very practical, especially in the Undercity. And I wanted to ask you about, like, what would, because the phrase that I have kind of come up with to describe the way it looks is neon steampunk.
That's an interesting, like, to some extent, yes, for Piltover, but for the Undercity, it's kind of like, sort of, yeah. It's interesting because like that the aesthetic of the slums for the Undercity is just so prominent, obviously, but it is mixed with that neon sort of vibe every now and then. Like you see the vendor's bar, for example. I love the design of that bar. It looks incredible.
Yes. Yeah. By the way, I love the name of that bar too, because I've actually been to a real life bar called The Last Drop.
Oh, actually? It's such a good bar name.
It's a fantastic bar name. Yeah, I love the way that the visual style of both Piltover, the Upper City, and the Undercity. You can tell that they actually do belong to the same city, but they each have their distinct feel to them.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, you know when a scene is taking place in the Upper City versus the Undercity. Like, just by the way the things look around them.
Yeah, they said there's so much character to everything, and it, like beyond the characters themselves, which we'll get to. But yeah, the locations themselves, because there are more places to be seen besides Zon and Piltover. There's like these sort of like as we said, the bar itself, Silco's office, the council room. There's so many like small locations that just have so much character and they look great. They look fantastic, and again, it goes back to they feel lived in. They feel like they have been there before the story happened and after the story happened, right?
Yeah, you get the sense that this city has been around for quite a long time, and the city itself is set up as sort of a city-state. At least that's the impression that I get from it, because it doesn't seem like it's part of an actual nation. Yeah, it seems like the city itself is a nation.
And like we do get hints that there's more stuff out there beyond Piltover, but yeah, for now it's like city-state is that's actually a very appropriate to say about Piltover, I think.
And also something, obviously, that occurs in Act 1 is we get introductions to a lot of the principal characters that the story will revolve around. And that's something else that I wanted to point out. A method of writing that I love. I mean, there's many different ways you could write a story, a very direct route from A to B. You can introduce plots A, B, C, and D and have them all run concurrently. Or you can do what Arcane did and introduced multiple plots and have them interweave and connect to each other throughout the telling of the story.
It's so good, and it's so satisfying when things finally
comes together.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what happens a lot in Act 1. You see all these story threads that are introduced, and they seem like they're not connected, or if they are connected, it's very tangentially. They just connect and then they go off. But then by the end of it, you see this is all pretty much connected from the very, very beginning. Mm-hmm. And that's even in the introduction of these characters, you can see that. In the very first moments of the story, where you have Vi and Powder and their gang of people, that to me, that opening sequence when they're going in and they're I guess playing Robin Hood, stealing from the rich to give to the poor.
Pretty much, yeah.
Not take out of it that it's actually setting up a much larger plot to come. That gives you a great glimpse very quickly into the plight of these characters from this Undercity. They're definitely an oppressed class. They're definitely being held back by people who are above them. For sure.
The Undercity is a shitty place to live in compared to Piltover.
Yes, and that first scene exemplifies that so much. They're playing Robin Hood for a reason.
They're trying to make this big haul. They're trying to steal a lot of stuff so they can go back to the Undercity and sell it. And the dynamic between the characters is so good in that scene. I love it.
Yeah. Also, one thing I absolutely love is in the second episode, you actually see... So, one of the things that happens in the first episode while they're ransacking this place is they get caught, right? Mm-hmm. And someone tries to break in and catch them, and they're ransacking it, and they get out as quick as possible, and then, there's that chase through the upper city into the undercity, where they end up losing, or Powder ends up losing most of the loot that they actually did get.
Yeah.
And that ends up setting up a whole thing with her character arc. But then in the very start of the second episode, you actually see the other side of what's happening on that door, that person trying to break in. And that introduces the character of Jace.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy shit, what a great way to introduce these two disparate story threads and show that they were always connected from the beginning.
It's great. It's very intelligent, and it's a very satisfying experience to watch it, because you almost every episode you have this like new connection you're making. It's like, aha, I get it. So that's what this is all about, and it's a very satisfying viewing experience.
And that's another reason why I like this style of writing, and maybe it's the same way for you, is it doesn't assume that the audience is stupid.
Yeah, it expects you to keep up.
It lets them figure this out for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons Baccano is my favorite anime of all time is because it takes that idea of storytelling, but just puts it on steroids, and it's really fun. It's really engaging. Like, you feel you want to like keep track of what's going on, because it's just so satisfying to like connect the dots.
Mm-hmm.
It's great.
Yeah, I also love how in the beginning, the first couple of episodes, as you're introduced to Vi and Powder and their little gang of misfits, it's shown that no one really likes Powder that much.
She's a very troubled child, you could say. It's very apparent from the beginning that she's a bit off, but Vi always is sticking up for her.
Yeah, that something is a little bit wrong. But then you have that scene where like she's listening to, like, she's overhearing them as they're talking about her, and she only hears one part of that conversation, and she assumes the worst. And then she runs away before she can hear Vi sticking up for her.
Because she's a kid. I mean, even though she is a very troubled kid, she's still just a child. It's like it's kind of understandable. It's kind of heartbreaking, but she just wants to feel like she's useful to others and that people love her. And it's just she, as a child might, she happens to hear like the worst things that people have to say about her, or the negative things.
Yeah.
Even though, like,
and the way we're introduced to Vandar too, like how
what
he
a great
sticks
character,
up for
by
Powder.
The way. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. And the way he sticks up for Powder, even though no one else seems to.
Mm-hmm. And he makes it very clear to Vi that she needs to keep Powder safe. I mean, as we saw, like, his last words for Vi in episode 3 are keep Powder safe, which sure doesn't happen to some extent.
Which it doesn't really happen, but it's a nice thought. But yeah, of course, some other stuff gets introduced as well. I mean, one of my favorite characters throughout the entire run of this is Silco. My God, what a great antagonist! Holy shit!
I love the journey we sort of go on with him, because when the show starts, he seems kind of one note. It's like this, like, very, like, just an evil dude who's like sort of a foil to Vander. It's like he doesn't seem like there's anything more to him beyond that. But as the show goes on, you sort of see more and more layers to him, that he's not an evil guy. He's a person, right? His way of going about things is very cruel, very, very cold, but at the end of the day, like, he has his dreams that he wishes to fulfill, but then suddenly now he has now Jinx besides him, and he cares about her, and that sort of question whether to follow his dreams that he want to fulfill, or like keep his sort of daughter, maybe daughter, safe,
adopted daughter.
Yeah, it's great. His character is probably my favorite character in the show as well. He's amazing.
Yeah, like you say, when he's first introduced, like, even I thought, oh god, this is just going to be a stereotypical mustache twirling villain.
Yeah,
and even up until like the third episode, like, I still thought that. But then when we get into Act 2 and especially Act 3, it's like, wow, this is a very I kind of like feel for this guy, because I kind of understand where he's coming from.
Yeah,
which I love it. I love when writing can actually get me to sympathize with the antagonist.
Mm-hmm. And it's great because almost all the main characters, they just feel like real, like fully thought out like people in terms of how they wrote them, right? They feel like real people and not just stereotypes. Even Jinx, which is a very out there character, you understand why she is the way she is.
Yes, that's something I wanted to mention too, like especially with the character writing in this show. Like,
it's incredible.
You could argue that there are multiple main characters of this show, especially since the story doesn't simply follow one character through these different story threads. It follows multiple characters through multiple story threads.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at two of the main characters for this show, Vi and Powder. Obviously, these are both like structured to aka Jinx, are both of these characters are structured to be strong female characters, but neither of them come off as the stereotypical Hollywood strong.
It doesn't feel like
character.
pandering.
No, it doesn't. Why? Because they have very obvious character flaws.
Yeah, they just feel like real people with all their strengths and weaknesses, and it doesn't feel like pandering. That it's like, because by the end of the show, I was like, oh shit, a lot of really like awesome female characters in this show, and he never felt pandering or patronizing for a second, because they didn't went into writing this show as like, oh, we need a diverse cast of characters, a lot of strong independent women and stuff like that. No, they just went in writing people, right? They thought about creating three-dimensional characters in all the senses you might think of it, and it's great. It's great. Yeah. You can connect to these characters.
Yeah. I mean, and there are multiple female characters in this who are women in positions of power, and they don't feel like they're just there because they're women. They feel like they're there because they actually have skills, they actually have knowledge, they have tenure or reason to be there.
One of my favorite examples of that is the introduction of Mel in the second act, when she's like talking with her assistant about stuff, and in the meantime she's like going through these like contraptions of sorts, and it's like she's like, and like the seller is like telling her, this contraption is like this and this is that, and then she picks one and he's like, oh, this is a children's toy, and she's like, perfect. And then it cuts to her walking to the council room and gifting it to one of the councilmen, and she tells him, this is a very, very difficult puzzle. I'm sure you'll have such an intelligent man as you will have a good time with it. And he's all over the moon for that new toy. And in that one like small scene, you get her character, that she is like this very scheming, very intelligent person who knows how to read people. And it's awesome. It's awesome. I love that. That's one of my favorite like examples of how they just know how to write characters in this show.
It's just it's a great example of, you don't need these long protracted story arcs to get character development. You can get it with a single scene.
Mm-hmm. Just the characterization in this show is awesome. It's incredible. I love it.
It is. So one of the things that's also introduced in Act 1 is this dynamic of magic versus science, especially with Jace and Victor trying to develop magic into this, real, tangible thing, which it's kind of implied that magic is something that people have known existed for quite a while, but they've chosen not to pursue it because they think it could lead to, like, actual devastation and ruin.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And Heimerdinger is like this very genius. He's a genius, and he keeps hammering home the point that don't mess with this. You don't know how to control it, because he's scared of it. He
is the personification of the phrase, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something.
Yes, very much so, yeah.
He basically says that over and over in multiple ways throughout his character arc.
And no one listens to that poor dude.
And absolutely no one listens to it.
I love Heimerdinger. He's great.
I love him too. Not just because I want to give him head pats.
And also the rest of the cast, the designs of this show are top notch. They're great. I love the design of every character.
So, with the introduction of both Vander and Silco in Act 1, we're also we are given an introduction to two things that become very, very important throughout the rest of the running of the show. Number one is the corrupt enforcers.
Yes.
And I say corrupt in very big air quotes, because to the people of the upper city, obviously they're corrupt because they're working with people in the undercity to try and maintain the status quo. But they're doing it for the benefit of the people in the undercity.
Yeah, that dynamic is really fascinating because, like, you get the dynamic between Vander and that officer, but then later on in the show, that dynamic sort of flip is like you get a new perspective on that dynamic when Marcus, the sort of younger enforcer, gets thrown into that position to work with Silco. And
Yeah.
it's so good because you get to see how this guy, who is very, very righteous to some extent, is just like put in this situation where it's like he doesn't know how, like, there's no win in this situation because either his family gets hurt by Silco or like other people get hurt by him not like cooperating. It's great. I love that dynamic, how they sort of show you different sides of it.
It is. And then something else that we get introduced to through Silco, who is essentially a drug lord when he's first introduced.
Yeah.
Is we get introduced to the idea of Shimmer, which, let's be honest, it's just magic meth.
It's magic meth, yeah.
It's just magic
super
meth.
ogre.
It is. It literally just turns people into these hulking ogres that can Hulk smash, I guess.
I mean, Vander literally turns to Hulk smash when he takes it at the end of Act 1. Let's be real.
Yeah, and it's also like when it's introduced, it's obviously in its early stages of development because, like, you know, Silco seems like he's going through these different prototypes of like what formulation of this works and this causes this to happen, and like it's almost like with the thing with Vander, like that was just an experiment to see, well, how does this batch do? But then by Act 2 and 3, you see that it's become like this thing that people use just to make themselves feel better.
Yeah. Like the chick that works for Silco, she like the arm is sort of fueled by Shimmer, right?
Yeah. And people use it to make themselves feel better, like in everyday life. Mm-hmm. And they show people getting addicted to it as well.
I love how thought out all of this is. Like they introduce the concept of Shimmer and just go with it to all of the extremes you could think of. It's really cool. And the same for Hextech.
Conclusion.
Yeah, and the same for Hextech. Like they discovered these orbs that sort of like generate, that are for magic, and then slowly to try and develop it into like practical things, like these big fists that are like supposed to, when you are in a cave, or the hammer as well. Like they thought of it as like something practical, but not necessarily as a weapon at first.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one thing I love about fantasy in general, is I love it when fantasy, especially fantasy that revolves around any kind of magic, goes to any extent to show you a way that magic can be used in a practical manner. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like so often in fantasy, magic is just this tool used to drive the plot along, and it's never shown to be used in any other capacity than how the story is being driven along.
Right.
So I love it when fantasy stories actually take a moment and show you, hey, yeah, this is being used to drive the plot, but look what else it can do.
Yeah. The use of magic and as it progresses to Hextech is very, very interesting in the show. And it's sort of the classic question of like these scientists trying to just make progress and discover these new things, but then their tools are being used for something that they didn't wish for them to be used as, which is weapons in this case.
It's just another form of corruption. It's corruption of the idea. And corruption, but both corruption and power become very important running themes throughout the course of this show.
Hey, I mean, Jay starts the show as this wide-eyed scientist who's like trying to make progress, and by the end of the show, his intentions might still be good, but he has become corrupt. To some extent.
I mean, you look at someone like Victor, who is also pretty, I won't say a wide-eyed idealist, because he is, he's old enough to where he's become a little bit world weary, but he believes in the idea of actually using the technology, the magic, to
good, because he believes it could heal him, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, and by the end of it, he becomes so consumed and obsessed with it that like it's literally consuming him. It's turning him into this creature.
Yeah, we don't even know what are the consequences of his actions. That's probably gonna happen in season 2. But it literally like it consumes his assistant that then like sort of is a part of him now. It's very strange. He is being corrupted by this for sure.
Yeah, but then the end of Act 1, it ends with a big confrontation between Vander and Vi and Powder and their little gang, and Silco and his, like, I guess, army that he's building up.
His little mob.
His mob. And it doesn't end well for Vi and Powder and them. Most of them end up dead.
And I love how it feels like they could make it any time, but something's about to happen. And of course, it's Powder jinxing it, And I love
literally jinxing it.
Literally jinxing it, and I love her reaction where it's like, where she's so excited. Oh, her new bomb worked. It worked. She's so excited, but then she realizes, oh shit, I fucked it all up. I jinxed it.
I killed everybody.
And Vi loses it. She absolutely loses it at her. And it's heartbreaking. It's rough, and
it is.
It's
so and sad. She runs away.
But that's the even more heartbreaking thing, that Vi might have run away, but she didn't abandon Powder. She just she needed that moment of just to figure things out, to just breathe a bit, to just understand what the fuck is going on. But she had no intention of abandoning Powder. That's the tragic thing about the scene. If she maybe a second later, if she would have returned to Powder, maybe this entire story would have changed. But then, she got taken away by Marcus to prison, and then Silco got his hands on Powder, and it's tragic. It's very tragic.
I mean, Silco has that line at the very end of episode 3 where he actually embraces Powder and he's like, we'll show them all. And it's like, I'm thinking in any other anime series out there, this would be the end of a season. This is how a season would end. But and this is only the end of episode 3.
Yeah. It's great. It's so good. And at first it seemed like maybe, because again, as we talked about, Silco seemed kind of one note at the beginning, and we thought maybe he's just using her for his own gains. He is using Powder, but what's awesome is how we see their dynamic and relationship develop more and more, where it's very much a father-daughter relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's so
and then we move on. And then we move on to Act 2. So there is a bit of a time skip. It's not really expressly stated how much time has passed, but at least several years.
Yeah, several years have passed. We don't know exactly how much.
We don't know exactly how long, but several years have passed, and now we see Jace has become like a man of the people. He has become, because of his introduction of Hextech, this magic device, he's actually been able to invent several things to make the city of Piltover even greater than it was before. Like they have these devices that can send, like I'm assuming they're airships, but I'm assuming they're like shipping. Mm-hmm. Container ships in a sense,
or cargo.
So like it's become like a center of trade and commerce and culture, even more so than it was before, because of all of these Hextech inventions. But a big question, not only with Jace himself, but Victor, who's working with him, is like, is this idea ready for mass consumption? Is magic really safe enough? Have we got it nailed down to where it's safe enough for people to use every day? Because right now, the things that are being done with it are things that like people who are trained to do it are using. Like, the thing with the... I don't even know what you call it, but the thing that sends the airships...
the big portal thing, yeah.
Yeah, I'm assuming those are people who are trained to use it that are using it. And like all the magic stuff that you see it looks like it's being done by people who are trained to use it. Professionals.
Yeah. Just the question is are people ready? And then Heimerdinger shows up and it's like, no, it's not ready. It's still not ready. It's too soon to present this to the wider population. And
yes.
And obviously Victor and Jace are disappointed by it, but you sort of understand why Heimerdinger is so worried about this technology, because it has massive potential to be something very destructive.
And he's old enough to remember a time when magic was used for destructive means. And
by the end of the show, he's very correct.
He is very much correct. But yeah, that's a big thing with Act 2, and you actually see that in the very opening episode of Act 2, Happy Progress Day, where he's speaking, and even in the middle of his speech, he changes his mind. It's like, wait a minute, no, this isn't ready for people to see. We need to work on this more.
And I love how he's very much torn between both Heimerdinger and his own ambitions, and then walks in Mel, and she sort of like encourages him to follow his own intuition and his own like goals of like producing more of this hex tech and giving it to more people for everyday use. But again, he is looking at it as like this wide-eyed like scientist who's just trying to make people's life better, but she's looking at it as a politician with her own agendas. And that whole dynamic at play between them is great. It's great. I love their dynamic. And then in the background, while that happens, as Jace gets more and more wrapped up in the politics of it all, Caitlyn gets further away from him. Like, I love how in Act 1 they're sort of present as these like friends, sort of childhood friends who like were very close, but as time moved on, they got very separated from each other. She now is like she has her own ambitions as an enforcer. She wants to be more of a detective accept and not be just a guard who's like in a very safe positions because of her parents. And I love how like, because at first when you see Caitlyn and Jace, you have this very, at least I thought they're going for like their relationship or whatever throughout the season, but it very quickly sort of ends their friendship. It doesn't necessarily end, but it's not as prominent as I thought it would be.
Well, yeah, we didn't really talk about Caitlyn in Act 1. Like, she is introduced in Act 1. Like, she is the daughter of the, I guess,
Jace's
patron
sponsor.
family that's, yeah, the patrons of Jace's like studies into magic.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much all we get. Like, yeah, she seems like she's just at the time she's kind of a child and like just trying to learn what she can, and not much is really. She's not a very major character in Act 1. It's really in Act 2 where she comes into her own. And yeah,
for sure.
I actually thought they were setting it up where there was going to be like this romantic relationship between them, but it wasn't going to work out. And because he was obviously going to get more and more corrupted by the magic. The hex tech stuff that he was trying to develop.
Yeah, and I love how it's sort of like presented where he's sort of still going after Caitlyn in the second act, but she's very much more focused on her investigation about what's going on with Shimmer in the outer city, and it's
her job.
Yeah.
Yeah. I even like when we're first reintroduced to her in Act 2, like he's actually trying to flirt with her, and she's like, yeah, whatever.
It's great.
Yeah. But also someone who's reintroduced is Powder, who is now called Jinx. That was cool.
Yeah, her introduction is... now, I knew Jinx as a character, but you told me before we started recording that was very surprising for you because you've never seen Jinx. You don't know anything about her.
Yeah, I'd never seen Jinx. I didn't know anything about the character in League of Legends. I knew nothing about it. And I will say one thing that surprised the hell out of me is, and it really subverted my expectations... Take note, Ryan Johnson. That when at the end of Act 1, like I genuinely thought that Powder, aka Jinx, was being set up to be like for a tragic redemption, a tragic redemption story where she was gonna like for whatever the time skip was, she was gonna kind of fall deeper and deeper into this pit of depression and despair and actually work for Silco, which she obviously does.
Nope.
And then like there was gonna be like some kind of awakening where it's like, wait, this isn't me.
Well,
and she's gonna start destroying Silco's stuff from the inside.
But then you see her in action, and it's like, oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Crazy bitch.
My subverted expectations were, I kind of expected that she was going to be with Silco, post episode 3. I didn't think that she'd become batshit fucking insane.
Yeah, she's great. I love how insane she is.
I read something, and I can't remember who it was that wrote this. I want to say it was from an article that I read on like Anime News Network or something, or one of those outfits. But saying that Jinx is actually a pretty good representation of schizophrenia.
I love how they depicted the animation. We haven't even talked about the animation. Fuck. How they depict Jinx sort of like schizophrenic nature is so good with different animations that are like sort of overlaid on these objects as if these like puppets are talking to her and she's like just losing it. It's so good how it's depicted. It's so visceral and it kind of terrifying at the same time.
I love how like when these happen in front of other people, she'll actually start responding to the specters that are talking to her in her head.
Yes.
And then the people be like, "What?" And then I'm not talking to you.
Yeah, her just whole presentation and presence in the show is so good. Like, I love how even towards the end of the show, she sort of becomes this sort of like the boogeyman of this world. Like, whenever like things seem sort of quiet, and then she shows up for a second, you're like, oh fuck, oh no, like, it's so cool.
She is chaos incarnate.
Yeah, very much. Yeah.
So something else that happens in this, so Caitlin, like you mentioned, is already an enforcer, and in her an investigation that she's doing about stuff that's going on in the Undercity, she is drawn to Vi, who is apparently in prison, and she goes to talk to her, and gets her released, and that really sets up the crux of what happens from then on.
Yeah, her and Vi going to the Undercity, figuring what is going on with Jinx and Silco and Shimmer and all of that. And that new dynamic they bring to the show with Vi and Kelly is very entertaining. I love their dynamic and how it develops throughout the season.
Can I just say that it is great, because by the time Act 3 comes around, it's somewhat obvious that Caitlin has certain romantic feelings for Vi.
I think for both of them, like, and vice versa, I think. It's very apparent, like, Vi also has a thing for her.
Can I just say thank you for not, like, throwing into our face constantly, like, look here, guys, lesbians.
Because, oh, holy shit, take note, Hollywood, when you're not fucking pandering and just try and, like, write good characters, it doesn't feel like you're pandering. We're just, like, entertained by, like, characters that feel like real people. I know, it's insane, but why can't people sort of like take note of that? Because it doesn't feel patronizing or pandering. It just feels natural. I
don't understand. Like, it's so easy not to do it.
It's so easy. So easy. It's insane. It's like when the season ends, you have all of these leading ladies, some of them gay, some of them not, and all of them just feel like people. They don't feel like they are defined by, oh, I'm gay, oh, I'm a woman, I'm a strong. No, they just feel like fully developed characters, you know? It's crazy, but it just works. Insane. I know, right?
Yeah. So a lot of other stuff does happen in the in the second act.
Yeah, we're introduced to the firelight.
I had a little bit of a burp there. I was trying to stifle.
It's you thinking about lesbians. It just gets you on, I guess.
Yeah, lesbians give me gas.
But we're introduced to a lot of stuff in the second act, yeah.
One scene I absolutely loved is in episode 5, where Silco actually takes Jinx to a lake and actually performs like a baptism with her.
Yes.
Like that scene, that number one, super creepy, but super well like shot and animated, and like, oh, it's so good. Like, it gives you a great insight into like the nature of Silco. Like, yeah, he kind of cares for her, but he's certainly manipulating her while he cares for her.
But then you have like another scene, which is one of my favorite scenes between the two of them. That it's like when Jinx is working on this like new weapon, new device, and she's listening to like this song in the background, and she's very much like in her own world. And then you see Silco like showing up at her place, and he's like shouting at her. It's like after she attacked the place in Piltover, so he's like screaming at her. It's like, what's going on? And she's not listening. And I love how it's very simple, it's very subtle, but when he approaches her, he doesn't hit her. He doesn't do anything abusive towards her. He literally just turns off the music. He sort of like takes away her toy to get her attention. Very much like a father would do in a healthy relationship, right? Just very subtly just showing that he does care about her. She's not meaningless in his eyes. Like otherwise he would have maybe like smacked her around and stuff to get her attention, right?
Like an evil person.
Yeah. But no, he's like treating her like as a daughter, which their dynamic is great. It's so good.
Something else that's also introduced in the second act is Victor is very, very ill, to the point where he's dying. He's given essentially a terminal diagnosis, which further accelerates his obsession with the idea of the hex core, because he thinks that it can actually be used to help people in a medical sense, especially when they realize that they can introduce organic matter to it and it makes that organic matter regrow. But they can't figure out how to keep the plants that they introduce it to from wilting. So that's something that they cannot figure out.
And that goes to lead to a really dark place where they're trying to figure out what to do. And then later in Act 3, we sort of get the answer how to maintain this object. And it's kind of disturbing.
Do you know what it's very reminiscent of?
Mm.
How alchemy works with human alchemy and Full Metal
Alchemist
Brotherhood.
That's true. Yes, that's very true. Yeah.
It's equivalent really exchange, my friend. Equivalent
exchange. Let me clap my hands real quick.
Yes. Pray to the holy relic. I mean, what?
Yes.
No, but I love that too, because it's something that you've seen in the real world too, scientists becoming obsessed with their creations to the point where it starts destroying them.
Yeah.
I love that dynamic. I love that dynamic because you've seen it so many times. It's very real. Especially if you know that you're dying and something that you're working on could potentially be used to help you, to treat you or cure you.
Save yourself.
You're gonna get obsessed with it.
Yeah, because Victor is looking for he's grasping at whatever straws he can to get an answer if he can save himself, because obviously he's desperate. He's very by the end of Act 3 he's very desperate.
He is incredibly desperate, and one of the things that brings both Jace and Victor into conflict with Heimerdinger is the fact that Heimerdinger's species, whatever it's called, lives for hundreds and hundreds of years, but humans don't live that long. Yeah. And the reason that Heimerdinger can has the privilege of being able to wait for progress is that he can live long enough to see it through. Yeah. Humans don't always have that capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where you get a disconnect between the two of them, because obviously Jace and Victor are both humans, and they may have a lifespan, if they're lucky, 100 years.
But it's you understand why that Heimerdinger is that sort of he says that it's very logical of him to say that, but he's also saying that in a very, very naive way. He looks at things very naively. We talked about this before, but one of the best scenes that characterize, in my opinion, Heimerdinger as such a naive scientist is in the opera house. All of the council members are in the opera house, except all of them are scheming and doing politics with each other, except for Heimerdinger. He's the only one who's actually watching the opera and having a good time, because he's the only one who's not a politician first, he's a scientist first. And it's kind of sad to see how slowly he loses more and more of his presence in the council, because they're more driven by their own agendas and politics.
Yeah, and it's very reminiscent of the whole dark smoky room thing that a lot of people accuse modern day politicians of doing. All the stuff that they do is done with I won't say inherently nefarious intentions, but certainly shady intentions.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Again, something that's very, very real. And I assume that there are people in actual governments around the world who, get in there and they genuinely want to do good. And some of them may end up like Heimerdinger, or some might actually just get corrupted by it, like Jace.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
It's also fun watching his, because, throughout it, up until I would say Act 3, particularly near the end of Act 3, he keeps up this front of no, I'm a scientist first, not a politician. I'm a scientist first. I've done these deals, but I'm still a scientist. I'm still a scientist. And then,
that's very childish
end,
of him.
Completely, yeah. And until the very end, he just completely leans into his no, this is political now.
And after the events of the ending, I have a feeling he's gonna get even more extreme about it in the second season, whenever we'll get it, to be honest.
Yeah. And then, of course, one of the last big threads of Act 2 is the reunification of Jinx and Vi. And that scene is wow.
Probably, maybe one of my favorite scenes in the entire show. Like that whole sequence of Jinx lighting up the beacon that Vi gave her all those years ago, which in that moment you realize, oh shit, she latched onto that beacon for that many years because she always thought about Vi, about her sister. Mm-hmm. And then when she lights up the fire and Vi is approaching her, that song is in the background. And it's we talked about how this studio used to make music videos. This is one of their best, man. That whole sequence with I think it's called Guns for Hire. It's so good. The editing is so fantastic when you see like the camera just like circling around Jinx as you see like her past friends who she killed like up against her back, and it's like it's so haunting but beautiful at the same time. It's amazing.
Something we really, I mean, we've mentioned it briefly here and there, but something we haven't really talked about, just the brilliant cinematography.
Yes.
Of this series, like just so good.
Just so much visual storytelling.
Something you pointed out to me right before we started was even the scene right before Jace gives his speech where he puts the mug down and it covers up Victor.
Brilliant.
Brilliant. Fucking brilliant.
Yeah. Amazing. And that's the entire show.
Especially because the mug says Man of Progress on it and it's got fucking Jace's face on it.
It's fantastic. It's sharp. It doesn't overstay itself. It doesn't like, it's not like it doesn't like hit you on the head with what it's trying to say. It's just so good and on point. And that's for the entire show. Like again, and the animation just complements it. And goddamn, the animation, this show looks so good. Like it's so pretty, and the effects animation look amazing. I love the sort of mix we have of like, obviously it's a CG show to some extent, but you have these incredible 2D background art that they have for all the places, and you have these I love some of the effects are 2D animations sort of, and they look amazing. It's breathtaking to look at this show. Every now and then you just see this shot that is like, wow, I can screen cap that and put it on my wall and I'd be happy with it. It's amazing.
Yes.
It's incredible.
So, yeah, we get to the end of Act 2. We have the Jinx. She lights the beacon. Vi shows up with Caitlyn. And then they kind of have a little bit of a fight when the Firelights show up. And this is the first time we're really introduced to the Firelights, although they were kind of hinted at the very beginning of this act.
Yeah.
And the Firelights are essentially another group of people who are from the Undercity who are sort of opposed, more or less, to what Silco is doing. They're trying to make it a cleaner place, a better place. They're trying to clean it up from the Shimmer like addicts that are running around, and they're just trying to make it like a place more worth living in.
And then we are reintroduced to Echo, which we do see him at the beginning of Act 1 as a kid. But now he's a badass.
Yeah, he's a very minor character in Act 1, but when he's reintroduced in Act 3, yeah, he becomes a really great character. Great character arc for someone who had so little screen time in Act 1.
For sure, yeah. He is great. His design is, again, it's so cool. He looks so cool.
Yes. And the you mentioned this before we started, the masks that each of the Firelights wear, they're very well designed. They're very evocative.
Yeah, for sure. Great designs all around, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, a lot of Act 3 revolves around Vi and Caitlyn's attempts to sort of inform the people of the Upper City, particularly the council, of what's going on in the Undercity and like why some of this stuff is happening, and like the fact that Silco really just wants independence more than anything else.
Yeah.
Like he wants the people of the Undercity to be ruled by people from the Undercity, because it's become very obvious that the people in the Upper City don't understand what's going on and can't rule over them.
Because they just don't get proper reports of what's going on in the Undercity. Because, again, we have the dynamic with Marcus, who is aiding Silco by just not reporting stuff that's happening, and sort of like turning a blind eye to all of the more criminal activity that's going on there. So obviously
and there's that return of the corruption and power dynamics again.
Yeah, which is so fascinating. And I love how sort of when Vi manages to get to the council with Caitlyn, she has this sort of like this small conversation with Jace where they're like sort of frustrated by the idea of like talking won't get anything done. We need to take action. And then for a split second, Jace actually goes through with that and actually like goes with Vi to destroy one of the Shimmer factories. But then when one of the children there is murdered, he sort of like gets sort of shocked by it. It's like, no, this is not me. I can't do this. This is just, I can't do this. And he goes back on.
And the way that Vi turns that around on him, it's like, if you can't take this, this is what life is like down here. This is what you govern over.
Yeah. It's like, this is all I've known in my life. It's like, it is how it is.
Yeah. And like he even says, I forget the exact quote he says, but he says something like, I wouldn't even know who to tell that their child died.
Yeah. It's rough.
Amazing that you learn children the fact that the child that got killed was one of Silco's like lieutenant's children.
Yeah. It's a big oof.
Yeah, it is a big oof.
Because then they pressure Silco, and that whole like very small subplot about these like lieutenants sort of pressuring Silco to get him off like the ruling position. That is so satisfying because you see just you for a second you might forget how conniving Silco is and how ruthless he is, but then he just he just dismantles them. It's great.
Yeah, and he dismantles them with something that they're all very, very familiar with, but they've forgotten because of him, because he was the one that raised them above it.
Yep. It's great.
It's so good. And then there's that scene in Act 3 where Sevica, who is Silco's like right-hand woman, I guess top lieutenant or whatever, is like I forget the guy's name, but is
the tiger guy
courted by one of the lieutenants.
Yeah.
I forget his name.
The guy with the tiger thing, right?
Yeah. And he's like trying to like appeal to her ego, and it's like, we could do this together, and you could be like a co-leader, and blah 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 blah, and like it's just left at that, and like you think, well, is she gonna turn? Is she not? And then the point comes up between both Silco and those lieutenants and that woman, Sevica, where like you see the perfect opportunity. Like if she's gonna do it, it's here. She's got to do it here. It's now or never. And you can see her pull the sword out. It's like, oh my god, she's gonna turn. And then nope, fuck you.
She's loyal to Silco to the end. Yeah.
Yeah, I also love how she only kills one of the two people that are there, and so that the other person can go back and tell everybody what happened.
Yeah, it's great. By the way, her fight with Vi in the bar is so fucking good.
It is. Oh.
Like we haven't talked much about the fight scenes, but man, that fight scene specifically is great. It's so satisfying.
Yeah. It is. It absolutely is. Like just the animation, the choreography, it slaps, and the music. My God, the music.
Yeah, it's great. I would highly recommend to anyone to check out the soundtrack with all the songs that are from the show. It's so good. So many bangers.
I will say that it's very reminiscent of bar fights I've actually seen IRL.
Oh, you've seen bar fights in real? Oh shit.
I've been involved in a bar fight IRL, Matai.
Save this for the next WTF because I wanna get some details on that.
No, it's great. This the way it's staged. It's fantastic.
Speaking of fights, we're kind of jumping around, but the fight between Jinx and Echo later on in the, I think it was the penultimate episode. I might be wrong.
Are you talking about the one on the bridge?
On the bridge, so good.
Yeah.
Visually, it looks amazing how it cuts back between the past when they're just kids, playing and fighting each other like just as a game, and then at the present where they're literally just trying to kill each other. It's,
yeah, it's so good.
It's visceral. It's great. It's intensive.
I could watch that over and over again, and like how it's like. It stages to where it seems like it's very early in the morning, maybe like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, because there's fog rolling in over the bridge, and it's kind of like it's hard to see too far and ahead of you, and it's just
just
I love
fucking incredible. Yeah, this show looks incredible. I can't say that enough, but yeah, Arcane looks amazing.
Yeah. And there's two very important things, threads that are brought up in Act 3, and in fact they're kind of teased in Act 2 as well. One is that Silco is very much in conflict with himself in regards to what's going on like around him. He encapsulates this in a single line: "Is there anything so undoing as a daughter?"
That scene, dude, that scene where he's just sitting next to that statue of Vander, and that as a symbol of shit, like in that scene you sort of see how he sort of understands Vander as a person, respects him way more because he understands the position he was in back in when he was alive, and it's so powerful. And that line specifically, it's one of the best lines in the show. It's so good.
Yeah, again, the dialogue is just so well written in this. But yeah, that there's so much conflict within himself, because I think even he realizes that Jinx will be his undoing if he doesn't do anything about her.
But he just cares about her so much.
Bring himself to do anything about her because he genuinely cares.
Yeah. And
this is what we mean at the start when we were talking about how he was introduced as this like mustache twirling villain. But my God, if you stick around with him for 2 or 3 more episodes, you're going to find out there are layers to this guy that onions would be jealous of.
And and what's incredible is that the same for almost all of the characters in the show. There is no weak character in this season. It's insane. There's no weak character in this season. In the final episode,
we were talking about it. Even characters that are introduced like at the very end, like Mel's mom. Oh my God, how like so instantly recognizable. Like her characterization. Like this is who she is. She is a tough, no nonsense bitch. Like fuck politics. It's all about power. It's all about projecting power. It's all about
and in such
power.
a short and concise time, they sort of give you her character, where she's from, Noxus, and you sort of get hints of shit. The world is bigger than we thought. There might be hints of something that comes later that's related to her. I mean, if we look at the end of the show, she's probably going to be a big force in the next season. Which I
would assume so, yes. Both figuratively and literally.
Yeah, pretty much. It's
because she's a big woman. She's a big mama.
Incredible how they can do that in such a concise time. It
is.
Wow.
It is.
The writing in this
it's
show
a testament
is
to how well it's a testament to how well done the writing is. Like you can tell great stories in short run times. You 100% can, and this is proof positive.
Yep.
Another thread that was again introduced in the second act, but really comes to a head in Act 3 is Vi is a big part of the reason why Vi is trying to find Jinx is because she thinks that she can turn Jinx, and there's still something of powder left in Jinx. And I mentioned this to you again before we started, that it's very reminiscent of, in the original Star Wars trilogy, Luke Skywalker's belief that there was still good in Darth Vader.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe there is some good in Jinx. I mean, that reunion they have in episode 6 is like, who knows? Again, it comes back to that question of if they would have managed to get out there together instead of getting separated again, maybe this is it. Maybe that's how Vi could have sort of turned Jinx back around to not away from Silco and all of his like schemes. But then we get to the end of the season, to the tea party, as you will, and it's whoa.
the Mad Hatter's tea party.
I love that scene where Vi like wakes up and she sees this like small tea party. She's like bound to this chair. She sees Silco bound to another chair, and she sees then Jinx shows up with this plate in hand, and you're like, oh my God, because earlier that episode, again, I talked about the whole like how Jinx is like the boogeyman of this world, and one of my favorite cases of that is Caitlyn is back in Piltover. She's like, after this long journey, she and Vi sort of broke off each other. Like Vi is like, this is done, like this isn't going anywhere, and Caitlyn is just like taking a shower. She's like trying to figure out what's next, and then like in a single cut, you see just Jinx in the background. It's like, oh shit.
No, the thing I love about that is how it's built up, because she gets out of the shower. You think that this is going to be some kind of a small reflective scene, like she's going to start talking to herself, like, what the fuck was wrong with me? I did all this wrong. Da, 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 da. And then all of a sudden, like, she gets out of the shower, she turns the water off, and then you can see in the fog as it lifts, like as the mist like clears from the mirror in front of her, you can see one of Jinx's like what do you call it, like her tags or whatever.
But also with the purple like shimmer, because
mirror.
this is after she was sort of injected with shimmer to be saved after the fight with Echo.
But yeah, you can see it in as the like the mist starts to disappear from the mirror, and like it's the slow realization on Caitlyn's face as to what it is, and like it's the cut to black, like the instant cut to black, and you're like, something just happened.
And then when she shows up in the teapot with the plate in hand, and you're like, oh no, did she kill Caitlyn? Oh no! And then it's literally just a cupcake, and she's like, I'm not that crazy. Come on,
I'm not that crazy.
It's like, whoa. That scene is so intense.
And then she will. It's also worth mentioning. It's also worth mentioning that there's other chairs around the this little tea party where she has dolls of people like the what was the guy's name from what was the two guys from Act 1 that was also in their little gang?
Oh, they're friends. I don't remember, but yeah, like the kids.
Yeah.
Which again, throughout the season, you see them sort of talking to her. Which is like
her like schizophrenic episodes.
Yeah, it's rough.
But yeah, she has like little doll versions of these characters, and it's like, and she classifies as like it's a party for the liars.
Yeah, that scene is masterful.
And then there's and then on each side of the table there are two chairs. One says Jinx and the other says Powder, and she's like, "All right, Vi, where do I sit?"
And that's the crux of the story of this season. It's like Vi sort of like fighting to get back her sister, and it's like it's so heartbreaking. But Jinx is sort of like very content with sitting down, and it's like, this is me. I'm Jinx. This is who I am. She's very content with herself. It's kind of sad, but it's so heartbreaking as well.
But before that, even though, like the scene where it's essentially like a stare down with guns.
Yes, yeah.
Where she's like, oh God, I gotta kill someone here. Who the fuck do I gotta kill? And then like you see her like shoot one of the chairs, and you as the audience member, you don't know who it is yet. And then it turns around and it's Silco that she just put a bunch of rounds through. And like she immediately regrets it too, because she runs over. It's like, I'm sorry.
It's so sad because it's like she cares about him, he cares about her. It's like it's this very fucked up relationship, but it's like,
and it's also worth mentioning that
feelings.
I know it's worth mentioning that a big part of why both Silco and her were conflicted is because Silco actually approached Jace with an idea of a peace treaty between the Undercity and Piltover, right?
And you see throughout that entire like scene, the moment like he's very much like he has this conviction about him, about I'm gonna get this deal, and then Jace is like, I'm gonna need Jinx, and that moment you can see it in his face, in his facial expression. It's like he's conflicted. It's like, I can't do that. I can't give you my daughter. It's like, wow.
Yeah, he's like, but someone needs to pay for all this. Someone needs to go to prison for all of this. And Jinx is the best person to go to prison for all of this. And you can see that's like in his eyes, like he's so close to the goal that he wants. He wants sovereignty as a separate entity to govern over themselves for the Undercity. And he's so close to it. All he has to do is, because they're willing to capitulate to all of his other demands, but all he has to do is be willing to give over Jinx, and it's the one thing that he has the hardest time doing.
And all that is communicated just by the animation and how he reacts to that. And that's brilliant, dude. That's so good. Oh my god.
It's communicated. Like, he only has one working eye. I'd like to point out. Like, it's communicated by the animation of one working eye that Silco has.
It's
just
incredible.
That look in his eye. It's like, he's like, I can't. I want this so bad, but I can't do it. And his final line to Jinx, it's like, I never would have given them to you. It's like he was ready to go to war over Jinx.
Her. Yeah, that's so powerful. And then he dies. The best character in the show dies like that. It's like, oh, I'm gonna miss him. I'm gonna miss that son of a bitch.
What a fucking phenomenally written antagonist, though.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, and then after this happens, I mean,
we get to the grand finale.
The grand finale of which, so and as all this is going on, right? The council members of Piltover, like they've said that they're gonna accept this idea of a peace treaty and give
the tragic
Undercity sovereignty as a separate entity. And like the second they do that, here comes Jinx firing a fucking rocket at the council.
And that's the council. I mean, Heimerdinger isn't there, but Mel is there. Jace is there.
Everyone is there except Heimerdinger. And Heimerdinger was actually ousted as a council member.
Yeah. And then you see the look of terror on Caitlyn and Vi's face as Jinx is just gonna destroy that. And that's the end of the season. And wow, what an incredible way to just end it.
What an incredible way to end, number one, end the season, and number two, create incredible amounts of hype and stuff for a second season, which has been announced.
Yeah.
Now, an actual date hasn't been announced yet, but it has been said it's going to be post 2022.
So we're not getting it for
anything
for next year, probably.
I would be surprised if we got it within 2 years, to be perfectly honest, because you showed me an article where they worked on this for 6 years,
which is just wow.
Yeah. Now, what that means exactly is a little bit up for interpretation because it's not expounded upon in the article that you linked me, because that could mean that they worked on the writing for 3 years and the animation for 3 years.
Yeah, it's not clear how much, like, so obviously a lot of like the tools they had to use, they sort of really learned how to use them for this project, obviously, because like they talked about in the article how up
it's a
this
long
point,
form project. It's not a minute and a half.
Yeah, it's not like 4 minutes of music video. It's like it's 9 episodes, 40 minutes each. It's a it's massive. So I wonder how much of those 6 years is just them figuring out stuff in pre-production for like the tools they're using. And I wonder if
think about this, Natai.
Yeah.
This may only be 9 episodes, but it's 9 40-minute episodes.
Yeah.
They gave us 18 episodes of an anime.
Like, yeah, pretty much. I mean, think about it. Like, a lot of anime and Hollywood movies take about 2 to 3 years to create, and these movies are like, 90 minutes? So...
Yeah, if that.
Yeah, that's insane. But... yeah, the ending of the season is incredible. It's so goddamn bold, and I love it because it just creates opportunities for whatever comes next. Because, as we mentioned, Mel's mom arrived in Piltover, and we know she's very much an extreme person who's very much into, like, warmongering. So, if now the council is gone, and I'd assume Mel is dead because she was at the front of that window. She got the brunt of that rocket, right? I would assume
I'm going to assume that at least 1 or 2 of the council members will survive this, but they will be significantly weakened.
I think Jace is one of the surviving members. And I think like what comes next for his characters next season is just going to turn into more of an extreme leader.
I think if he does survive and he's the only member of the council that survives, I just foresee him becoming a straight up dictator.
Maybe. Again, we have Mel's mom there that's probably gonna just like her daughter, just gonna push him in a certain direction. And yeah, I think that's... yeah, it's gonna be so
safe
good.
To say, I think you and I significantly enjoyed this and are very much looking forward to more.
This is one of the best like animated shows I watched in the past few years. I think it's very clear.
It's certainly one of the best of 2021.
Yes, for sure. And yeah, I'm very excited to see what comes next. It's just so good. It's such a great show. It's so good, you know?
And one thing we didn't touch on at all, and I mean, we're already almost an hour and a half into this, so we should probably stop. Sorry, John. But one thing we haven't really touched on at all is the incredible voice acting, at least for the English dub.
Yeah, all of the characters are there's not even a single weak performance. It's insane.
Even the smallest characters, they may only be there for a scene or two in the entire run of the show. Just phenomenal voice acting.
So full of personality. It's great.
And I love the fact, and I really think that more. I know that with anime dub production, you don't always have the capacity to do this, but the fact that they actually went out and got voice actors who were French, who were Indian, or who were whatever, who weren't just Americans doing accents. Like, thank God, because I think some people just doing some of these accents would have been awful.
Yeah, probably.
Just incredible. I applaud, so much applause for
this
that.
Entire production is just all around just like incredible. Like, it seems they knew like they had something special and just they went all out with it. It's so good.
The amazing thing, so I mentioned in the beginning that this was a sort of a co-direction between Pascal Charou, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that name.
You tried.
Arnaud Delorde. From what I have been able to tell, this is both of their first foray into a long form, like content directing. Like, wow! If this is their first attempt, amazing.
I'm excited to see what comes next. Yeah, from the two of them. Absolutely.
Yeah, I can't applaud this production enough, and I'm super hyped to see even more as time goes on. Who knows? Maybe the story will be finished after 2 seasons.
Who knows?
But one thing I do know is that we won't find out until sometime after 2022.
My bet is
that's pretty much it. That's 2023, right? With JoJo Part 7.
That's coming 2030. Let's be honest.
2035.
Yeah.
But yeah, unless you got anything else to say, Natai, about Arcane, I think we've pretty much covered.
That's pretty much it.
A lot of
just
the big stuff.
Fantastic show. Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah. Can't say enough good things about it.
Oh, I will say this one last thing to end. So, what do you give it out of 10?
It's a very, 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 very strong 9 out of 10. I think for me, it's very, very.
I would say,
to 10.
I would agree. Like, 9, I'd say 9.5 out of 10.
Yeah, it's a very strong 9 out of 10. Very solid. Very just cream of the crop.
What issues that I did have with it were very, very minor. It's really, really close to a 10 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, it's
really, really close.
Fantastic. Again, like, I'm just thinking about certain scenes and moments from this show. I'm like, wow, this is just incredible. Absolutely incredible. Just good shit all around. Yeah.
Indeed. But yeah, that's gonna be it. Thank you all there for dropping in to listen to us talk and just gush about Arcane for nearly an hour and a half. Check the description below to find Anime Club After Dark on Twitch, on social media, and on Discord. We also have a merch store where you can buy lots of nice Anime Club After Dark swag. Swag. We also have we have a lot of stickers. So if you like stickers, you're good. And with that, I have been your host, Alex, and I will see you next time. Say goodnight, Natai.
Good night. I'm dead. I'm so tired. Still recovering from the new year.
Hey, Natai. Happy Progress Day.
Happy Progress Day, everyone.